All right. So if you have any questions at all about what I'm going to be up to as far as helping the team, definitely just let me know and reach out via Slack, and yeah, we can chat about any of your questions. Um, oh, I think Ifad, I think your mic is on.
Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. Just wanted to let you know. So yeah, let's go ahead and jump right in. I've put the demo in our chat, our demo agenda. And first with interaction design, we have Stacy with content standards that are currently a work in progress.
Okay, hi guys, can you hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Gotcha. Sorry.
Okay. Let me share my screen. Can you guys see?
It's loading.
Yep.
We can see it now.
Okay, cool. So what I've been putting together little by little here for a while now is writing for user experience. So I think this will be helpful in terms of kind of getting folks thinking about the best ways to go about writing for UX and just some general high-level principles for why it's important and how you can kind of go about thinking about your content choices inside the UI. So it just starts off with an introduction to user experience and writing for it, and then some general principles. Some of these principles also apply to design in general, so they're probably really familiar, but this just frames it in a way so that you can think about it with regard to the content that you're including in the user interface. So we all know why it's important to understand our audience when we're designing, but from a content perspective, it can help you consider terminology, product standards that they're working with, how they talk about their work. So for all these different principles, I also include some strategies to try. So for audience, I'm including some information about user personas and how you can think about them from a content perspective. And then, so task, what are they trying to do? And then again, kind of framing this as a content question. So a strategy to try to understand the task and use that understanding to help you build better content is to frame each task as a conversation. So writing out, so for example, if you needed to help somebody create a new project, you could frame it as a conversation between you and your user and actually write out the different steps. So, hi, I need to create a project. Great, is this your first time using our service? So kind of framing it this way helps you step away from the design and interaction of it and kind of helps you figure out what questions you might have for your user, what questions your user might have for you, and it just helps you kind of figure out what content you're going to need to include in a specific user interface or interaction pattern. And then context. So where are users coming from? Literally, like where in the UI could they be coming from? Are they arriving at this spot from somewhere else in the app? Could they be coming from a Google search? So it just kind of helps you figure out what content you need to include to help orient them. And then personally, so what terminology would they be expecting to see? Are they going to be familiar with all this information? How much understanding are they going to have with this? Can help you figure out what additional content you need to include. And then emotionally, how is your user going to be feeling? So a good example for this is error states. So a lot of people have examples, 404 pages that are funny, error states that are funny. Just kind of taking stock of what your user's potentially going to be feeling in a given situation and figuring out if this joke that you're making is going to be funny to them or is just going to annoy them further. That's just one example of how considering emotion and context can help you pick the right content. And then also, how do you put it all together? So essentially kind of ditching the lorem ipsum and using words when you design instead of just shapes. And this kind of goes through all the different beginning, middle, and end. So content is going to be iterative, just like your designs are iterative. So kind of what to think about during different stages of design. And then also I started writing out some voice and tone. So this is just super simple stuff like using plain language, putting the most important stuff up front. So front loading that important information, using simple verbs and tenses. So this builds on a lot of what we already have written in our content standards, but it just kind of gives a little bit more of a prescriptive vibe to it with the do's and don'ts. And I'm still working on a lot of this stuff, but the link to this document is in the agenda. If you guys are curious, I'd love any feedback as I'm working through it. And that's all.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stacy. And Michael on visuals. Gonna see if Michael's here with us. Can you hear me, Michael? Okay. Thanks, Michael. We'll go ahead and skip, and we'll come right back. I'm sure there's some Blue Jeans challenges going on. All right. So with CSS, Christy.
Cool. Hi guys. So I finished where I started off last demo with, I'd made some starts to the chips. And basically I've made changes to the architecture of chips and how they work in groups. So basically the component is chips and it's an unordered list. And then inside of that are list items, and each list item is a chip. So for example, these single chips here are a part of chips, but they're just a list item of one. So that's our basic chip, that is it truncated, and then that's the overflow modifier. And then there's two different types of modifiers for chips, whether it's in a toolbar or a multi-select. And for a toolbar, basically it looks like this with that gray background and a different width. And then so it would look like this in a toolbar, and then when there's more chips that have overflown, use this button to show them there, and then when I click out of that, it would hide them. And then using a multi-select, imagine that this is part of like a drop-down or a type ahead at the top, so it would fit like this, and then when it reaches that max width, I'd click on this button and it would overflow like this. That is chips. And then also I've been reviewing some of the React PRs from a CSS and UX perspective. And in doing that, I came up with some guidelines just to create more of a consistent approach from Core and React. So these have been added, they're in there now, and I'll just read them. So PF React components should demonstrate all states implemented in Core without adding any new states. If a new state is introduced in PF React, it should not be accepted by the reviewer until an issue is created explaining why this example or modification is needed in Core and React. And you can tag the UX or UI designer. Textual content and styles from PF Next and PF React should always be consistent. That's even just like title case, spelling, etc. Larger PF React components can be broken into sub-issues, and those issues should link back to the larger issue. If an issue in Core will affect a component in PF React, this issue should link to the main PF React issue. And the CSS developers and UX designers should be tagged to review their respective PF React issue. So those are in there, and that's all I have.
Great, thanks, Christy. And Andy on tabs.
Sure. All right, sharing screen. So yeah, I've been working on tabs. I think I demoed this last time too with a very basic implementation. Now it's quite a bit better. Thank you to everyone who's been reviewing this. This has been quite a journey with a ton of comments inside here, and it's in a much better shape at this point with a little bit more work to do. And we removed the focus state and went back to the default hover state because we're eventually going to make the universal one across all of our components. So that's been done. Updated accessibility documentation, usage documentation. scroll buttons works. And resizable with scroll bars. Secondary tabs are also done, and build tabs as well. Still a bit more work to be done, but pretty good shape.
Great, thanks for the update, Andy. And Coker with button, drop down, form control, and input group. We got a lot going on there.
Okay, share my screen. Yeah, pretty quick update should be, it's just some visual changes that were partly design decision and then part driven by accessibility to increase color contrast with the buttons, drop downs, and then form control elements. So here are the buttons. The border radius is smaller compared to before. They were like oval or pill shaped before. Now you have a really small border radius. Improvements in the dark color theme as well. And then drop downs. We got rid of the border radius, so we have square corners. We also changed the treatment of the borders so that the borders are different colors, different hover state. You can see what it looks like collapsed, banded. And then for form controls, similar updates to the drop-down. We got rid of the rounded corners on the form control elements, including select boxes as well. And new border treatment and hover state, same hover state, and active state, focus state as the drop-downs as well. And then that's pretty much it. You can see this in the input group example. This basically looks like it did before, but just with the updates that I mentioned for each of the things that are included inside of an input group. That's it.
Okay, great. Thank you. And Matt Carlton with vertical nav updates and an example component template.
Hey, I just heard that Matt said his power went out, so we might need to come back to him.
Okay, thanks for letting us know.
Yeah, no problem.
Fingers crossed on that one. Okay, Dana with, oh, sorry, I'm skipping ahead here. With the wizard update, was that Sarah?
Yeah, so I had worked on implementing the finite wizard, which is the version of the wizard where all the steps are known ahead of time. There are no conditional steps. And once, so I did that as a component, so it could be put anywhere the designers decided, but the initial demo was to put it into a modal, so I had it also displaying in a modal as a demo. Once we put it all together and got some examples in there, then it sort of became clear that the sequence of steps was confusing and that the whole thing kind of needed to be reevaluated. So that PR is closed and it's back to design and interaction to do a little bit of reworking on that wizard.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Thanks for the update. And Matt Nolting on pagination.
See my screen?
Yes, we can.
Cool. Yeah, so this is the pagination component. The approach I took was to basically lay out all the individual components because we have two presentations. One is more of kind of a single component inline flex layout where you'd have a drop down and then the pagination, and that would be controlled by another layout. So for example, the toolbar in this case. And so that is this example. And if we break it down to the responsive breakpoints, we can see that it wraps and doesn't do much else than that, but looks good, looks clean. And then there is the modifier class, which is PFM footer, which then takes all of those components and styles them according to the design here. So there, and then the bottom of the footer. And that has a little bit more functionality, which is basically borders. It updates margins and paddings, and then on the responsive view, it has a bit of its own unique layout, which is this. So it stacks the pagination and anything that may be above or before that in the DOM. And it's also, I also built in a generic class that is it's a pagination element, which then flexes one, and it will basically allow you to include another sub layout in the pagination, which could be something like chips or your current page with a little bit different styling. So it's flexible. Flexibility was the goal of that one, and that's what I got. Any questions?
Okay, great. Yeah. Any questions on that one?
Cool.
Yeah, and we'll leave some time for questions at the end as well. Let's see. Dana with workspace improvements.
This is all I ever get to demo. All right, it'll be quick, painless. Can you see the screen, Rachel?
Yes, we can.
All right. So we used to show the code in line in our workspace, and the way we've been approaching this workspace, so maybe for those that aren't aware, it's we haven't been doing a true full styling of it. We've been trying to learn what developers want as they're building these components and adding things to support them. So you'll notice the code is now not displayed quickly, but it allows for quick scrolling through the examples, say, okay, this is what I want, and then we can expand the code and the consumer could use that. So that's something we recently added, that ability. And another thing that's also there, which I can show in the documentation. So if you look at the contribution guidelines, we use handlebars for building out the examples, and we've been slowly adding utilities as people need them. And there's a couple of new ones that came in. One of them is contains, which allows for testing the properties coming in, as well as an example here that's in response. So if you're building out components and you're like, oh, it'd really be great if I could do this or that, open an issue or ping us on Slack, and we can see about putting it in there in response to those needs. That's it.
Great, thanks. All right, moving on over to React, to Tani with the login form. Now we don't have audio quite yet.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, and can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay, so I added the login form this iteration as part of the login page. So Amy had implemented the login page, but it was missing the internals, the form, which I had worked on. So this iteration, I added that. So this gives you the username, password field, and the submit button, and this remembered me, keep me logged in for 30 days, which is like a remember me checkbox. So, yeah, so it's, so there are quite a few props that you can pass into the login form to build it, and that's pretty much it. Any questions?
Okay. Thanks, Tani.
All right.
And moving on, folks, if I'm just calling you by your last name and you'd rather me call you something a bit different, then let me know. Through Spaxman, the AXE tooling enabled.
Hello. So, yeah, let me know if you can't see my screen. But basically, we've extended the automated accessibility testing to include PatternFly 4. So, the cool thing about this is you don't really need to do anything different than what you normally do to take advantage of this. So, just to show it in action, I've got PatternFly 4 development environment running, and basically we're looking in the developer console down here for issues. If I load a view that has an accessibility issue, Axe will report that in the console. It'll give you an idea of what the severity is of the issue, and if you expand this little arrow, you can actually get an idea of like what elements on the page are actually problematic. And if you expand it further, it will even sometimes give you some pretty specific advice on how to fix those issues, give you a stack trace and all that type of thing. If you run across a page that doesn't have any issues, it won't report anything. So one gotcha that I wanted to mention is that charts are a little finicky. What I've found is that oftentimes there are accessibility issues, in the charting libraries that we use, and we don't always have control over those things. So what I've found is that it will mention that there's errors, and when you go to expand the twist tie, it basically nothing will show up. I'm not really sure exactly why, but in these cases, what I've found is really helpful is to basically default back to the Axe browser plugin, which they have for Chrome and Firefox, and you can basically just go to this tab that will be added by installing that tool, and you can run this analyze on the whole page. And when you highlight the problematic issues, you'll see that it outlines the various parts of the page and it gives you a little bit more information too. It gives you some links that you can follow, but the main thing is it's here, it's working. It works slightly different than, oops, I need to turn that off. It works slightly different than it does in PatternFly 3. So here it will run on state change, which will happen when you navigate through different pages. In PatternFly 3, it doesn't run on state change. It may just be a bug, but in any case, basically, if you change pages here, you won't get new readings, but if you do a full page load in PatternFly 3, it's the same tool generating this output. You see we have obviously more issues in PF3 than PF4, which is kind of expected, but just wanted to point those things out. We're aware of them, so. And that is it.
Okay, great, thank you. And Dan LeBrecq on React Charts.
Yeah, sure. So I created a new package called React Charts. The idea behind a new package is basically you're not using charts. It's not something you need to pull into your application. So it's a separate package. One caveat before you start using charts to know that we're still a work in progress. It's kind of a cart before the horse situation. In order to style charts, we're actually wrapping the Victory chart library. So in order to style those charts, we need to create some components and examples, and then we can go back into PFNext and create styling, global properties for colors and whatnot. So what you're looking at here, the simple chart is kind of like a first stab at adding some colors. We only have so many blues, but we recently added some color palettes. So we're going to be seeing some of these, for the blues, we're going to get some of those new color palettes into the charts. There are going to be some different themes, for blue and green, and maybe some warm themes. So yeah, basically what you're looking at here is the default theme, the blue chart here. This is an example of how to add your own custom colors. And then this is what the chart might look like for a dark theme. Happens to be using green colors. So that's in a nutshell. Just be forewarned. What Michael Spaxman showed with the accessibility errors. There's still some work to be done here. Still needs to be styled. So, once that comes down through the pipe, from PNX, the different colors, the color palettes, we'll be adding that into React charts eventually. So this is the area chart. We have also have the bar chart, which you saw in Michael's little demo. There's a donut chart. We have some tooltips here. Text is the labels displayed in the middle. We have line charts. This happens to be using a green theme. This is a multicolor theme. And again, the themes will be changing. We'll be adding or subtracting themes depending on what we choose for the color palettes. But we have a pie chart, with some tooltips, and the stack chart. So 6 charts in total. Right now we have 6 different themes where there's a light theme, a dark theme, and a couple variations for blue and green and the multicolors. But again, that will be changing. So just be warned. That's about it.
All right, thank you so much. And I'm going to move back up to the visuals. Michael with chart colors and our global color palette changes, which I think will tie in really nicely with Dan's work as well.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me this time?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Oh, great. Okay. So yeah, that actually worked out pretty well. So we had to recently kind of rethink some of our colors, and this work kind of was prompted by my work on the charts. Basically in PatternFly 4, we've got a lot more dark backgrounds, but we've also still got a lot of light backgrounds. So we needed colors that worked well on both dark and light backgrounds. And so I kind of started with the PatternFly 3 color set and just kind of manipulated them to work better on both dark and light backgrounds. So here you can see they work well on both. And then it was also just kind of time for an update in terms of updating those colors to kind of match the PatternFly 4 aesthetic. So I just have some examples, a lot of which you just saw with Dan's implementations, which are looking great. But here you can see some bar charts, same concept where we've got like maybe a monochromatic or maybe a multicolor set, and then it works well as well on the light background. This is just like a concept card that uses a area chart or a sparkline, and you can see if we flip those colors into a dark theme, that blue on the chart works just as well. Line chart, 3 different colors, light background, dark background. And it's interesting to note how different the colors feel on the light versus the dark. So on the light colors, obviously the light background, the light colors are a lot more subdued. But when you flip it, they become kind of more bright because of that contrast. But the thing to note is that all the colors still work on a light versus dark. Whereas before, with our older colors, some of the darker colors on a dark background might get lost. Same thing for the light colors on the light backgrounds. So we figured we might as well update the global color palette because there are going to be other areas where we have colors happening, not just on charts. But in some of the areas that we currently use colors, especially in alerts, we decided to keep those palettes, or I guess kind of range of colors the same. So we've got a yellow color we've got for the alerts, and we decided to just kind of keep the yellows the same for that stuff and not worry about implementing this new yellow yet. And then we've also got like a light green color palette, which isn't pictured here, but we're keeping that for the time being. But everything else is changing to reflect these updates. So it's not only the chart colors, but it's also the global colors as well. And that's it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And then Matt Carlton, are you back online yet?
No, so he's going to be out of power for like 45 minutes. So
Oh,
We
okay.
can just add his stuff for next time.
Oh, okay. Okay. Thanks for the update. All right. Before we wrap up today, are there any questions on anything we presented? Okay. Well, if anything comes to you, just reach out. Thanks everybody for joining, and I'll send out the recording. I'll see you next time.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.